Discover the amazing transformative power of 5 minutes of spirit-led prayer each morning. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, battling the restless ache that curled around her thoughts like a noose. The quiet of the morning was a jarring contrast to the chaos churning deeper within. Her fingers quivered, the remnants of sleep trying to cling to her like an unwanted blanket. Today was just another day in a cycle of relentless demands: work shifts as a waitress, long hours as a cashier, and the unending weight of bills piling up like unyielding bricks. The shadows of her mother's recent passing loomed without mercy. What could 5 minutes of prayer possibly change? But as her resolve began to falter, something pulled at her heart, coaxing her toward that familiar kitchen table. It felt almost comforting, the flickering candlelight, the worn wood beneath her palms. She whispered words she hadn't spoken since childhood, fragile sounds spilling into the air. Please guide me, help me, each breath come with a prayer, a tentative call into the abyss where certainty lay buried. Yet, a flicker of hope ignited within her as she surrendered her fears, if only for a moment. As the days drifted into weeks, these fragments of prayer blossomed into a cherished ritual, a small oasis amid her frenzied life. With every spoken plea, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. Each whisper offered clarity like dust lifting off the air, showing her the shape of her dreams. It was during one of her morning rituals that she first met Helen, an unexpected catalyst who had a knack for seeing beneath the surface. Why not cultivate something beautiful, dear? Helen's gentle smile was like sunlight breaking through a storm. Her voice, imbued with the wisdom of countless tribulations, pulled at a thread deep within Sarah, a twinge of longing to be truly seen, to express herself in ways that felt meaningful. Inspired by Helen's stories, Sarah tentatively explored floral arrangements, wandering into a world filled with color and fragrance, rekindling memories of her mother's garden. In their backyard, fickle blooms called to her, reminding her of love she yearned to revive. Encouraged by Max's unyielding support, she began to share her designs online. Each post sprouted a small following, a community that emerged like wildflowers amid concrete. But even as excitement bubbled, underneath lay the nagging specter of insecurity. Just then, her heart dropped news of a towering chain store. Waves of relentless advertising aimed like sharp arrows at her small enterprise, ripped through her anticipation. Max caught her eye, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "We can beat them, Mom," he declared, but uncertainty curdled in her gut. The slick corporate machine loomed over her like a dark cloud, mocking her humble efforts. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With mounting pressure gnawing at her resolve, Sarah stood at a crossroads: compete against a corporation that exuded power, or stay true to herself and risk fading into obscurity. The tension mounted, constricting her chest like a vice. What if her creations weren't enough? What if her hard-fought progress crumbled under the weight of competition? The stakes were unbearably high. Could her passion prevail against polished marketing and relentless pressure? A storm of emotions churned, leaving her on the brink, with her dreams hanging by a thread. The ultimate question looming: was there a place for her in this relentless world, or would she be swallowed whole? Sarah's breath felt short, a tightness spreading through her chest as she mulled over her options. Each second brought a new wave of doubt, whispering that perhaps this venture was too ambitious, too fragile to withstand the onslaught of an industry titan. She could hear the echoes of her mother's voice, urging her to follow her dreams, but could she honor that legacy while also grappling with the fear of failure? The days blurred together as she ruminated on her choices. Her morning prayers had become a battleground between hope and despair. Sitting at the table where she once found solace, Sarah began questioning the sincerity of her creations. Were they truly beautiful, or just another attempt to escape the weight of her circumstances? The intricacies of her flower arrangements had started to feel hollow, a mere distraction from the harsh realities she faced, then the vision of Helen supported her through those foggy moments. Helen never faltered in her encouragement, saying, "Art reflects the soul, and your soul has depth." Could Sarah thread her childhood memories into something impactful? The idea pressed on her mind, igniting a flicker of determination. Perhaps she could share her story, her pain, her journey woven into her creations. Her struggles could resonate with others, the raw authenticity of her work might appeal to people yearning for connection rather than perfection. With a newfound tension fueling her resolve, Sarah crafted a few arrangements that encapsulated her story, taking care to infuse each flower with intention. As she carefully composed arrangements in vibrant colors, her heart swelled. This time, she wasn't just creating art, she was translating her experiences into something that had the power to connect like notes in a melody, each one vital to the harmony. What happened next surprised her. The first time she posted one of her deeper creations online, she included a heartfelt caption describing the journey that inspired it. Instantly, comments flooded in, people sharing their own struggles, how they connected with her words. For the first time, Sarah felt a part of something larger, yet, with exhilaration came trepidation. Each notification provided a rush, but also fueled anxiety about maintaining this relationship with her growing audience. What if they expected perfection? What if her next piece fell flat? The relentless marketing from the chain store continued to escalate, advertising campaigns saturating social media like a flood. With every alarming notification, Sarah felt the pressure mounting. Part of her was tempted to retreat back into the shadows, but Helen's words echoed, "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's working through it." With that in mind, Sarah decided to venture into the storm, raising the stakes to test her mettle. She planned a small pop-up event in her town, thinking it a way to showcase her creations while creating an immersive experience that told her story. The thought terrified her. What if only a handful of people showed up? What if comparisons with the corporate giant crushed her? Yet, a strange exhilaration accompanied the fear. She found herself lost in visions of vibrant blooms surrounded by warm discussions, laughter echoing off the walls. Could this be a turning point? Could reaching out with authenticity attract her community even more? As she prepared for the event, thoughts swarmed her mind. Was she ready to face a larger audience? What would happen if she walked this path, vulnerable and open? The moment of truth loomed. Could her passion and newfound identity hold their ground against the looming threat of the corporate machine? The countdown to that pop-up event was on, and every tick of the clock stirred both fear and anticipation. Would it be the moment she embraced her true self, or would it be the tipping point that led to her unraveling? As the day of the pop-up approached, Sarah's world narrowed to a whirlwind of preparations. Each flower she selected felt like a statement, a deliberate brushstroke on a canvas that held not just blooms but her journey, her truths. With each arrangement, she confronted lingering doubts. Was she ready, truly ready, to lay herself bare before the world? In quiet moments, the negative narratives clawed at her like relentless shadows. What if no one resonated with her story? What if the entire venture fell flat, rendering all her efforts futile? The weight of her aspirations collided with her insecurities, a treacherous duality that left her breathless more than once. Yet, it was during these intense moments of reflection that she unearthed something crucial, a discovery about her resilience. This vulnerability, she realized, wasn't her weakness, it was her power. It was in sharing her struggles that she could connect with others, allowing them to see their own stories reflected within the petals of her flowers. The rawness of her narrative became the thread binding her creations together, something she could wield as a weapon against the polished superficiality of the corporate giant. Armed with this revelation, she thrust herself into the final stages of preparation, determined to create an atmosphere that invited people to explore their own vulnerabilities while engaging with her art. Sarah envisioned her space as a sanctuary, each arrangement thoughtfully displayed, radiating warmth and authenticity. She arranged soft lighting that would cast a gentle glow, creating an ambience that felt intimate and inviting. Glancing around her modest apartment, she imagined it transformed an oasis bursting with color and emotion. How far removed it felt from the solitary bloom of desperation that had initially surrounded her. As the day came, with each step towards the venue, her heartbeat quickened. The nerves fluttered in her stomach, a persistent reminder of everything on the line. Would her commitment to authenticity attract others, or would they overlook her art, caught in the shadow of the industry titan? When she opened the doors, a rush of faces filled the room, each one mirroring her own mix of curiosity and apprehension. The sight of them sent a jolt through her, a mix of fear and exhilaration. Slowly, an undercurrent of excitement brewed as conversations began, stories mingling like scents wafting on the air, blending with the rich hues of blooming flowers. But amidst her growing anticipation, a sudden wave of insecurity washed over her. Each smile seemed laden with expectation. What if this didn't go as she had envisioned? Her arrangements, the culmination of her heart and soul, waited silently, perhaps too quietly, underneath a weight of uncertainty. As people approached her creations, she could no longer bear the weight of expectation. They were not just art pieces, they were her heart laid bare. In those moments of inquiry and admiration, there lay her vulnerability, the very foundation of her artistry. With the crowd engaged, a sense of fortitude bubbled within her. She prepared to share her story, fully aware that doing so meant inviting scrutiny and connection alike. The blossoming realization that she was not only an artist but a storyteller began to solidify her presence in this small but vibrant community. Then, a voice emerged from the crowd, a woman who looked weathered yet resilient. "I want to hear your story," she said, making eye contact with Sarah. It was a challenge, almost a demand, stirring within Sarah a burgeoning need to answer. As the words hung in the air, a spark of determination ignited deep within Sarah. Could this moment be the turning point she had long desired? Would sharing her story not only empower her but also inspire others? The answer loomed before her, and she instinctively felt a shift. In that instant, Sarah recognized her journey was not merely about her creations. It was about cultivating a dialogue, a sanctuary where healing and beauty intertwined. With renewed resolve, she stepped forward into the crowd, ready to confront this moment and her fears head-on. Yet, even as she spoke, her mind flickered with worry. What if this connection turned fleeting? What if her truth led to unintended consequences? Each revelation infused her voice with urgency and cemented her resolve to break free of the past. As the evening unfurled, with questions ignited and connections forming, Sarah realized she was also on the brink of something new. The corporate titan loomed in the background, but right then, she felt empowered in her authenticity. She was no longer simply a flower arranger, she was a vessel for transformation. The bustling atmosphere surged with energy, and in the twilight of that gathering, she sensed the clear path ahead, but shadows of doubt still lingered. Would her journey build into something greater, or would she find herself stumbling back into the shadows? An unfamiliar determination thrummed through her veins. Would she dare take a leap towards her true potential, knowing that each decision could either elevate her or lead her to a pivotal crisis? As the laughter and warmth enveloped her, she stood at the precipice of her dreams, realizing the road ahead was infinite, filled with both promise and peril. Would she seize it, or succumb to the weight of expectations? The sound of laughter mixed with the rich scent of flowers was intoxicating, but the weight of expectation loomed just above Sarah's head, threatening to crush her newfound resolve. She had taken the first step into vulnerability, but every word she spoke felt like a delicate petal fighting against a harsh wind. She glanced around the room, scanning the faces eager for her story. Would their desires for connection amplify her courage, or would judgment stiffen her tongue? Each nod and murmur encouraged her, yet doubt laced through her thoughts like chaotic ivy. What if she faltered? What if this audience saw her as a fraud rather than an artist? The woman who had prompted her, with steadfast eyes that held a wealth of wisdom, encouraged Sarah to dig deeper. "You're not just displaying flowers, you're revealing pieces of yourself. Tell us why." Those words acted as a catalyst. Sarah drew in a breath, filling her lungs with courage. "These flowers," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "represent the pain and beauty of my journey. Each arrangement is a snapshot of my struggles, the moments that shaped me." She paused, letting the sentiment settle and absorbing the rapt attention in the room. This connection, this dialogue was what she had yearned for. The act of presenting her vulnerability was metamorphosing something primitive within her, awakening an inner strength that had remained dormant for years. But what he didn't know about himself was that he had the capacity to heal through art. A voice in her mind whispered, urging her to embrace her inherent power. As she continued speaking, the barriers she had erected began to collapse. The story tumbled forth, woven with threads of heartbreak and resilience, fear and determination. She no longer felt like an outsider peeking into a world that had welcomed her. Instead, she embodied the very essence of that world, raw, real, and unfettered. I once felt lost, she admitted, vulnerability coating her words, as if each petal stripped away was a part of who I was destined to be. It took stepping into the light, into the messiness of my emotions, to finally bloom. With every confession, Sarah felt a weight lift. She spoke of the moments where she nearly succumbed to despair, each story punctuated by the flowers she had crafted. The tension that had gripped her throat began to ease, replaced by flickers of warmth. Her art was breathing life into her truth. In the crowd, she spotted a few individuals nodding thoughtfully. There was a depth in their eyes that reflected understanding rather than judgment. It was the very connection she sought, a bridge that propelled her story from a mere existence into the realm of significance. Art must speak, she declared passionately, the fire within her igniting. It must unravel the layers of human experience, captivating and comforting all at once. Yet, even as these declarations formed in her heart, an unsettling truth swirled. Would this newfound courage withstand the test of the inevitable backlash from her close circle? Would they continue to support her choice, or would they see her passion as folly? With the air dense with emotion, she glanced back at the woman who had inspired her revelation, wondering how much of her own brilliance was still to be unearthed. Had she merely scratched the surface of her potential? As she closed her narrative, a flurry of questions cascaded from the audience. Each query was infused with curiosity, revealing a desire for more than just floral arrangements. They craved connection, insight, and perhaps a taste of the authenticity she now exuded. The evening sparkled with energy and possibility, yet she couldn't shake the simmer of anxiety that gripped her deeper fears. What if she stumbled? What if they discovered cracks in the facade she had constructed? The corporate titan was still looming, capable of shattering her fragile sense of self if they positioned their polished art against hers. Driven by a mixture of excitement and trepidation, Sarah's pulse quickened. Each response she crafted could either amplify her voice or cause her to retreat once more into the shadows. The battle against her self-doubt wasn't over, it had transformed, now taking shape as a quest for authenticity and courage. As the evening wore on and the crowd's excitement swelled, she knew that embracing this journey required more of her than merely laying bare her story. It demanded an unwavering commitment to herself and a decision to navigate the fine line between vulnerability and fear. Would she choose to let her story be a beacon of light, continuing to explore the depths of her creative power? Or would she cower under the weight of expectations, retreating to the comfort of silence and solitude? The momentum around her surged, pulling her into the moment, yet she felt an unsettling whisper reverberate in her mind. The time had come to face her past, the very foundations of her insecurities. Would acknowledging them lead to liberation or further entrapment? With the question still humming in her mind, Sarah stepped away from the audience, her heart racing and her thoughts swirling like the petals she so lovingly arranged. The applause echoed behind her, yet it felt distant, muted by the cacophony of her introspection. She had shared her story, but the deeper confrontation awaited, the one with her past decisions and the self-doubt that had gripped her for so long. Heading toward a quiet nook with potted plants spilling over their ceramic edges, she took a moment to breathe. The greenery reminded her of the care she poured into her creations, but this moment was different, it called for processing. She leaned against a cool wall, reflecting on the tension that had threaded itself through her life, forming a tight net of expectations that now felt suffocating. What had she sacrificed to fit into the expectations of others? The image of her neatly arranged workspace flashed through her mind, pristine, orderly, and undeniably lifeless. Had she, in her quest for approval, stripped herself of the color and chaos necessary for true growth? The thought was unsettling, and yet it also sparked something potent, a sense of urgency mixed with the need to reclaim her autonomy. Sarah's resolve began to crystallize. She could no longer operate on autopilot. It was time to align her art with authenticity, but how? She needed a plan, a new direction. The comforting embrace of her flowers was now the backdrop against which a more profound transformation demanded to take place. Opening her notebook, pages marred with sketches and notes turned into a canvas for her chaotic thoughts. Each stroke felt like a release. The words poured out, thoughts circling her desire to explore instead of solely conform. What if, she scribbled, I created a series that challenged not only my technique but my emotional depth? Something that would force me to confront my fears directly. The idea was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. But while the path forward was hazy, a flicker of clarity began to emerge. To intertwine her art and her truth should not only be a personal endeavor but a challenge to her audience, inviting them along on the journey rather than merely showcasing her finished pieces. Suddenly, the remnants of fear dulled in her mind like a fading whisper. Time for the real confrontation, the corporate titan that continued to loom in distance. Would that world appreciate this deeper dive into the self, or would she face rejection? Each brushstroke and arrangement from that point on could either validate her or expose her vulnerabilities to judgment. Sarah, came a gentle, familiar voice, breaking through her reverie. It was the woman who had urged her to dig deeper. You've sparked quite the conversation out there. Your passion is palpable. What are you planning to do next? Caught off guard, Sarah blinked. I want to create something raw, a series that reveals my insecurities through my art. It feels risky, but I think it's what I need. The woman's expression transformed, admiration gleaming in her eyes. Risk and vulnerability often lead to profound growth. You have the strength to navigate this greener path. Thank you, Sarah said, her heart swelling. It's time for me to stop hiding. As they spoke, Sarah felt a renewed sense of empowerment. The heat of her commitment ignited a flicker of anticipation. She was ready to confront not just art, but who she was and how her past informed her present. Yet, a gnawing question lingered: would her leap into authenticity fit into the framework of an expectation-laden world? Knowing the answer lay ahead didn't soothe the uncertainty. Would the world embrace her kaleidoscopic narrative, or would it shun her for being unapologetically real? With resolve reshaping her spirit, Sarah made a decision: she would craft the first arrangement of her new series with the raw honesty she had just begun to embrace. As she stepped back into the bustling room, nerves tingling, she realized the time had truly come to face the critic within and the corporate world without. She had shared moments in her past, now it was time to paint her future, but first, would she find solace in the unexpected feedback of her closest allies, or would their silence echo her deepest fears? The air felt charged as Sarah re-entered the crowd, her mind buzzing with possibilities. She sought familiar faces amidst the sea of strangers, each a potential ally or a source of doubt. What would they think of her raw ideas? The sudden weight of their gaze felt like both support and scrutiny intertwined. As she moved through the audience, she spotted Jenna, a fellow artist and friend, perched cross-legged on a plush couch, her laptop open but her attention captured by the surrounding conversation. Sarah's heart fluttered. Jenna always embraced authenticity. If anyone could affirm her new direction, it was her. Hey, Jenna. Sarah called, forcing a smile that belied her inner turmoil. Sarah. Jenna beamed. That was incredible. You really brought something special to the table. What's next for you? The question struck Sarah at the core, igniting the apprehension swirling within. How could she articulate this new journey? I want to create a series that digs deep into my vulnerabilities. Art that might actually scare me, she confessed, her voice trembling slightly more than she intended. Jenna's eyes widened, reflecting genuine intrigue. That sounds bold, but also a bit terrifying. Are you ready to expose those aspects of yourself? The realness of Jenna's query hit hard. Could she truly expose her vulnerabilities? The idea of allowing others to see her insecurities, to witness the chaos behind her compositions. What if they rejected her? I think I have to be, Sarah responded, her breath catching in her throat. Hiding behind pretty petals feels limiting now. I want my work to resonate at a deeper level, not just look good. You'll find that the audience can sense honesty, Jenna replied with unwavering confidence, leaning closer. Your art should echo your narrative. Trust yourself. Trust the journey. With that encouragement, Sarah felt the tension in her chest ease, but an unanswered fear still loomed. What if her audience could only accept the surface-level beauty she decultivated over the years? I just don't know how to start, she admitted, each word tinged with vulnerability. What if my first attempt isn't well received? Then it's a part of your evolution, Jenna reminded her soothingly. Every artist cringes at their early work and has to confront those fears. But the winds of creativity will take you further than any fear can hold you back. Inspired, Sarah began sketching her concept in her mind. Imagery that reflected nights spent awake wrestling with self-doubt, pieces that illustrated the contrast between polished appearances and the chaos beneath the surface. Each stroke could tell a story, each arrangement could invite people into her true experience. Maybe I can start with an abstract piece, she quickly noted down, thoughts igniting her creativity. One that symbolizes the chaos of my mind trying to break free, colors that clash and bleed into one another. Yes. Lean into that chaos, Jenna encouraged. Create something that feels right, even if it's uncomfortable. The messiness will be your power. With newfound determination, Sarah made her way to a nearby corner of the room where inspiring materials lay scattered, vibrant papers, rich pigments, and varying textures. The blank canvas before her felt like the beginning of a new chapter that demanded exploration. As she gathered supplies, a revelation struck. She was not simply an artist confined to one style, she was a storyteller, a weaver of her own narratives through art. The idea of confronting her fears through her work was no longer a mere notion but an urgent calling. Yet as she stood, surrounded by all the things that could transform her vision into reality, the unease crept back. What if the raw honesty she embraced alienated her existing collectors and patrons? The fear of disappointing those who had backed her for so long was a chilling shadow echoing in her mind. This is going to be hard, she whispered to herself as she blended colors on her palette. Am I truly ready to pour my heart into what could be perceived as flawed? As her brush met the canvas, the vibrant splashes began to form shapes slowly. With each stroke, Sarah fought against doubt, determined to see how far she could push her boundaries. But lingering in her mind was the tumultuous question, could this new direction bring the acceptance she craved, or would it provoke a backlash she wasn't ready to face? As the chaotic patterns emerged, her heart raced. This was her chance to redefine everything. But would redefining herself mean losing the very audience she fought so hard to build? The brush glided across the canvas, its movements both hesitant and bold, an expression of Sarah's internal battle. Each stroke seemed to unearth emotions she had long buried beneath layers of polished exhibitions. She could feel the paint coalescing into shapes that spoke to her, each chaotic swerve revealing fragments of her psychological landscape, but doubt clawed at her mind like an incessant storm. What if all this vulnerability felt in the moment was merely a fleeting impulse? What if she was only transforming chaos into another layer of denial, one that wouldn't resonate, one that would merely be dismissed as a tragic attempt at depth? Breathe, she whispered to herself, attempting to anchor her racing thoughts. The cacophony of colors began to dance before her, igniting a spark of creativity. She remembered Jenna's words, messiness would be her power. With renewed focus, Sarah dove deeper into the tumult, something within her whispered to unravel every thread of doubt woven into the fabric of her past work. She began thinking about the myriad times she had suppressed explosive ideas for the sake of security. What if she channeled those past limitations into this raw creation? Could she connect with her audience in a more profound way than ever before? Yet as colors merged and developed, the familiar faces of her collectors flashed through her mind. Would they understand her evolution? Would they still want to support her chaotic expression? The fear of alienation lingered like a ghost, haunting her as fiercely as this new creative passion surged. What if they hate it? She breathed out, half joking, yet all too sincere. The thought terrified her. The security blanket of accepted norms began to feel suffocating, her heart raced with the urgency of understanding where she stood. Was she an artist for them or for herself? Digging deep into the well of her memory, Sarah recalled the humiliating moments when she faced critical reviews, witnessing those first budding pieces of hers reduced to criticisms. The bitter taste of disappointment still danced on her tongue. Would this new direction lead her back down that path, or was it the start of something liberating? Time slipped away as she methodically layered paint, each new color a cathartic release. The sharpness of her anxiety dulled just a fraction as the act of painting took precedence. But with each vibrant addition, the nagging question returned: was she truly willing to risk losing the audience she had spent years cultivating? The fear of loneliness settled in her chest. It was a familiar weight that came with the territory of profound change. Would her essence, captured in these chaotic forms, be enough to forge new connections? The allure of authenticity, so promising when expressed, felt like a double-edged sword, cutting through her apprehensions while posing an equal risk of rejection. As she stepped back, surveying the chaos on the canvas, she didn't entirely recognize the mindscape unfolding before her. This was a representation of her emotional turbulence, and for once, it felt like pure honesty. But clarity was still shrouded in uncertainty. She had stepped into uncharted territory, and the future remained ominously ambiguous. The chaotic imagery began to feel empowering, yet Sarah was acutely aware that embracing her fears required more than just creativity. It demanded relentless resolve. It required her to confront every critic, every doubter, including herself. Determined, Sarah took a deep breath and began to apply ferocity to her process. Maybe she could draw on that fear, channel it as fuel for a larger purpose. But as certain doubts flickered, an unmistakable realization hit her: the journey wouldn't conclude just with her brush against the canvas. It would become an odyssey rich with challenges that tested her artistic integrity and drive. A thought flickered, raw and urgent. Could this journey serve not only to redefine her artistry but reshape her entire identity as an artist? Most importantly, could it amplify her capacity to connect to others in unprecedented ways? With fervor boiling within her, she pressed on, her heart racing, her spirit ignited. But still clinging to her brush was the unsettling question lingering in the back of her mind: would her next steps prove transformative or transgressive, ushering in either triumph or turmoil in her embrace of this new, honest narrative? The air around Sarah felt electric with potential as she finally stepped back from the canvas. There it was, a tempest of colors and forms, swirling like a hurricane of her innermost thoughts. It wasn't just an artwork, it was a declaration of existence, a testament to her journey through years of restraint and self-doubt. With every layer of paint, a barrier she had built over her vulnerability began to crumble, revealing the raw, unguarded essence of who she truly was. But the allure of her chaotic creation was accompanied by a gnawing sensation in the pit of her stomach. The external world was still out there, waiting for her response to its pressures, its expectations. Would they recognize this fierce honesty? Would they embrace the unsettling beauty of her evolution? The anxiety surged again, memories of past rejections dancing like shadows in her mind, diluting her excitement with fear. Suddenly, inspiration struck, accompanied by a long-neglected voice within: stop waiting for validation. True artistry required not just expression, but intent. Strengthened by this insight, she found herself at a crossroads. She could either keep creating under the watchful eye of her audience or make this a moment of genuine rebellion. What if she hosted an exhibition featuring this raw interpretation of her journey? A bold confrontation with her fear of rejection. The thought thrilled her while simultaneously sending her heart racing. Would she truly dare to unveil her hidden self? Compelled by an unexpected surge of courage, Sarah grabbed a sketchbook and started jotting down her vision for the exhibition. She envisioned it as an intimate space, dimly lit, with each chaotic piece given room to breathe, allowing visitors to engage deeply with her work. The room would echo her internal narrative, a place where others could wrestle with their own discomfort, chaos, and longing for authenticity. Yet, as she sketched her ideas, another voice snickered in the back of her mind, taunting her with the possibility of failure. What if no one came? What if the pieces elicited confusion rather than understanding? Each thought clawed at her resolve, unraveling the courage she had just unearthed. Taking a moment, she closed her eyes and grounded herself with a deep, calming breath. What if I don't survive this? She whispered, contemplating the depths of her fear and the weight of its implications. Moments passed as Sarah wrestled with the stark reality that every step toward authenticity would ripple through her identity, affecting the world around her. Would she still be the artist the world sought, or would she become something entirely different, an outcast in her own life's narrative? Her fingers twitched with the desire to paint again, to channel this conflict into her canvas. But her desire to communicate this journey came with the recognition that she had to prepare for opposition, both internal and external. She needed to embrace not just the beauty of her work but the inherent journey it would send her upon. She could envision conversations that could emerge, deep discussions of vulnerability and resilience, human connections revolving around shared experiences and exploration of emotions. As Sarah reflected on these possibilities, the tension between her fears and aspirations transformed into clarity. This exhibition was no longer just a showcase, it was an invitation, a chance to galvanize her own spirit and spark an allegory for others. Could this venture not only redefine her artistry but also heal parts within her that had long been silent? Fueled by determination, Sarah committed to executing her plan. The artist's journey had never been about mere paint on canvas, it demanded interaction, connection, and the acceptance of uncertainty. What she didn't realize was that the real confrontation was not just between her and potential critics, but a deeper reckoning with her own fear of exclusion. And it would be this very confrontation that could either elevate her or render her silent once more. As she stared back at her chaotic canvas, a fierce resolve ignited within her. The time had come to turn the tide, to go all in, even if that meant risking everything she had painstakingly built. With a newfound sense of purpose, Sarah flipped to the next page of her sketchbook and began to draft her call for help in preparing the exhibition, partnerships, spaces, and support. This was her moment, and somehow, she felt an exhilarating sense of freedom flicker to life. But just as she felt engulfed by possibility, a shocking question pierced her thoughts. What if her own insecurity ruined everything? What if the risk meant losing more than just an audience? The looming uncertainty weighed heavily as Sarah placed her pencil down, the tip trembling slightly against the page. It wasn't just the act of reaching out for support that paralyzed her, it was the vulnerability that accompanied it. Her fingers lingered, the sketchbook opened to a future she was afraid to embrace completely. Doubts swirled within her, a storm that threatened to wipe away the sense of purpose she had just ignited. As she looked around her studio, inspiration was now mingling with fear. The brushes, the paint tubes, all those quiet witnesses of her creative journey felt silent, as if waiting for her decision. Should she take the next step into the unknown, inviting others into her world? Or should she retreat back into the shadows, keeping her relationship with her art confined to the safety of solitude? Pacing the room, her thoughts raced. In a rush, she recalled every time she had hesitated, each moment of indecision that had held her back from sharing her work. They lurked like ghosts, reminding her of the times she pulled back, just as she was about to leap into the light. The fear didn't belong to her alone, it was a universal battle artists faced. Somehow, she needed to transform this energy into something constructive. She paused for a moment, staring out of the window at the world beyond her sanctuary. A part of her longed to be part of a larger dialogue, to exchange ideas with others who had navigated their own storms. Perhaps there was strength hidden in that very connection. She could reach out, take that risk. Her artwork was indeed a reflection of her journey, but perhaps its true power lay in how it could touch others too. Compelled by renewed vigor, Sarah grabbed her phone and began scrolling through her contacts. A sense of focused urgency filled her veins. She started texting artists from her past, mentors, and supportive friends. The messages poured out, a tumbling cascade of invitations, invites to collaborate, ideas to brainstorm, discussions around her upcoming exhibition. With every notification she sent, her confidence surged slightly, and yet, flashes of doubt flickered. What if they responded with indifference? What if they saw her efforts as naive? Just as these thoughts threatened to derail her, she reminded herself that this wasn't just about validation. It was about connecting the fragments of her spirit to those who might resonate with her journey. After securing responses and agreements, Sarah decided to take it a step further. Hosting a small gathering of fellow artists and enthusiasts at her studio seemed appropriate, not only to share her work but to cultivate a supportive environment where everyone could explore and express their vulnerabilities without judgment. The planning sparked a fire within her. She set about curating invitations and art supplies, suddenly struck by the vision of a collaborative activity, a space for everyone to share their inner chaos on canvas, perhaps creating collective pieces that represented their fears and aspirations. Wouldn't that be a poetic expression of their struggles? Yet, as the night of the gathering approached, clouds of apprehension began to creep in again. Before she could rein in her anxiety, it rushed forward, drowning her in worries of what her peers would think. Standing in front of her chaotic masterpiece, the ominous question returned: what if her own insecurities shattered the experience for everyone? What would happen if her art did not resonate, if she could not withstand the voices whispering of failure? However, in the throes of her anxiety, Sarah anchored herself against the fervent pulse of her intention. This journey was hers and hers alone, meant to uplift both her soul and the spirits of others. With each inhalation, she recognized a lesson hidden in the chaos. Real growth emerged from honesty, a raw, untamed connection that transformed fear into fortitude. The night arrived, and as artists filed into her space, their own stories began to unfold, a tapestry of vulnerability and strength. It became clear that they were not mere spectators but co-creators in a shared narrative. For each brushstroke painted amidst laughter and reflection, Sarah felt her own fears begin to evaporate, replaced by the uplifting revelation that she was not alone. Yet, as the night danced away, uncertainty still lingered. For while Sarah celebrated this newfound connection, another shadow loomed. What if the acceptance she craved meant losing the very essence of her artistic identity? Standing amidst a gathering of familiar faces and newfound allies, Sarah felt a profound shift within. With each person who approached her canvas, a thread of connection wove tighter, not only between them but also between herself and the authenticity she had unearthed. The chaotic piece she had created resonated in ways she hadn't anticipated. The beauty of vulnerability pulled her audience closer, creating an atmosphere alive with empathy and shared experiences. Having risked exposing her raw emotions, Sarah now stood in the authenticity of her expression, no longer confined by the expectations of perfection. It became clear that each comment and glance reflected not judgment but camaraderie, an alliance formed through their collective struggles. The resonance of her story resonated, echoing in the hearts of others who had wrestled with their narratives of fear and aspiration. As she engaged in deeper conversations, recounting the journey that brought her to this pivotal moment, Sarah realized her art had become a transformative vehicle for change, not just for herself but for everyone who engaged with it. She was no longer merely showcasing pretty arrangements, she had become a storyteller crafting a dialogue of authenticity and connection. With each interaction, Sarah's confidence burgeoned. The lingering specter of doubt that once clouded her mind began to dissolve, replaced by a palpable sense of purpose. The acceptance that once seemed elusive was blooming in the understanding that she no longer needed to conform to an audience's expectations. The validation she sought had been there all along, waiting for her to embrace her truth and share it openly. At the apex of the evening, a moment arrived. Someone in the crowd, eyes gleaming with gratitude, articulated the impact her art had made on them. "You've shown us that our struggles can transform into beauty," the woman said, voice laced with emotion. "Your journey reminds us of the power we hold when we share our truth." The power of her honest expression, a power that had once terrified her, now became the very foundation upon which she could build her artistry. Through this experience, Sarah grasped that her victory was not solely rooted in the acceptance she craved or the applause from the crowd. It was a deeper realization. She had forged an unshakable bond with her authentic self and aligned her art with her identity. Partners in this journey of exploration and vulnerability were all around her, fellow creators willing to walk the path alongside her. In that realization, a quiet fulfillment washed over her. The chaos on her canvas now felt like a celebratory anthem of resilience. She stepped back, absorbing everything she had accomplished. She had transformed her fears into an opportunity for growth, turning the weight of past disappointments into a catalyst for healing, not just for herself, but for the community she had fostered. From that moment forward, Sarah was known not just for her artistic talent but for her ability to cultivate authentic conversations about vulnerability and resilience through her art. She embraced her journey, confident now that every piece she created would resonate from a place of truth. The industry titan that had once loomed over her no longer felt threatening. She had become a force, a beacon for others seeking connection in their own narratives. This journey was hers, matting layers of her identity with the vibrant threads of each story interwoven in her floral arrangements. Flourishing in a newfound solid confidence, Sarah found herself with an established position in the art world, anchored not by accolades or recognition but by the beauty of genuine human connection. In the end, Sarah had not merely conquered the challenges that encircled her, she had embraced them, cultivated beauty in their wake, and emerged transformed. What began as a sparse hope turned into a profound understanding, the realization that there is profound power in vulnerability and that honoring one's story is the ultimate act of courage. Take your own leap into authenticity. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that empower transformation. Feed the algorithm by leaving a like now, and be part of our narrative journey. Comment below to share your insights and reactions about this conclusion, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful revelation. This is the moment to show your support and ignite the change you wish to see in the world. Don't wait even one more second.